have a story, a grand narrative that is the anchor and justification for their existence, and that highlights the messages they hope to bring to their adherents. Hindus have tales of the battles of warriors and gods. Buddhists have the tale of the awakening of Prince Gautama and his discovery of human suffering that leads him to renounce selfish behavior. Jews have the framing of the covenant between the Hebrew people and their God. Christians have the teachings of Jesus and his sacrificial death and then resurrection. Embedded in these stories, we find wisdom and motivation that helps adherents understand their place in the world and that provides a basis for making meaning. Each in their own manner laid the groundwork for prescribing how our lives should be lived and explain our relationship to the force or forces that are the source of life and being. An underlying assumption is that humankind is a willful beneficiary of all of the acts of creation, and that humans are privileged in the purposes of the gods. The remainder of creation, our earth and everything in and on the earth, is there for humans to use, to learn to control. More and more, we have learned to question these traditional religious stories and to reject them as literal truth. And gradually, the old religious teachings are moving from a state of revealed truth to one of metaphor. And sacred texts are read as moral tales and suggestive sources rather than as law. But as much as we might feel we are shedding the trappings of traditional religious beliefs, even the more skeptical among us can't really say we have left it all behind. I say this because we live in a cultural milieu that was built within the constraints of several thousand years of belief and devotion. And so many of our worldly assumptions have been internalized from those religious cultures. The question we face as we start to abandon some of these stories is what, if anything, will take their place? There are many answers to this question, and an awful lot of what I will talk about here involve possible answers to that question. And many of them are quite disappointing. Looking at our culture, it's unclear what stories and morality tales most people follow. Too often, it looks like consumption and accumulation and sensory indulgence lead the way. But let's take the higher moral ground here. We're replacing the traditional grand narratives now with one that is even grander, far more complex, and immensely more elegant. This is the story of our planet and cosmos, as described by scientific discovery. It's a dual story. The first part is the epic of the Big Bang and the creation of the physical universe, an expanding singularity that somehow created all matter we know, and in the process forming stars and galaxies and planets and physical elements, reeling and careening through the immensity of space. The second part of the story is the formation of life, living beings, and the gradual evolution of a multitude of life forms, from single-celled entities to the abundance of more complex living beings living on the planet and living in the plant and animal worlds. Now, so how does this work, though? Is science our new religion? Well, for a while, much of the movement away from religion was framed in ideas of rationality, secular humanism, and the like. And our accomplishments in reason and science were understood to be the highest standards of knowing and held the only knowledge we could claim as valid. Now, don't misunderstand me here. I'm not opposed to either reason or science. Both engage methodologies and procedures that help protect our learning and discovery from falsehoods and biases, and they are the only verifiable way we can create true knowledge. For creating facts and working theories, science is the gold standard. But, and I think you knew there was a but coming here, while science is our best methodology for finding answers, it is unable to answer all the questions we really care about. And that includes many of the fundamentals that were addressed by traditional religion. Things such as, why am I here? Or what should I do with my one wild and crazy life? If our great narrative of universe creation and the epic of evolution are to be useful for us as a way of approaching and understanding our lives, we must be able to probe within them to find meaning-making ideas, purposive guides. And this is where we begin to shift our focus away from what is just scientific learning and spend our efforts in observation of and meditation on life, our lives, and the environment which we know and where we live. We engage with and respond to the world around us. It's what we do know. And as much as part of the world is characterized by building and pavement, with everything connected by sewers and power lines, and all of those things associated with modern urban life, I still know that when I ask people about where they find the sacred, what feels most holy to them, what gives us the deepest sense of place and of belonging, what brings us feelings of reverence, when we name such things, our answers most likely are grounded in nature and the natural world. Some might invoke arts and music. Some might invoke special people and relationships. But most answers come from nature. The grass between my toes, a sun setting over the ocean, wind rustling through trees, the aurora borealis, gurgling streams, snow falling on evergreens, a summer thunderstorm, birds flitting at our feeders. Although Leopold described the howl of the wolf as a noise that could unsettle an entire countryside. Nature resonates for us. Nature resonates within us, in aesthetics and in meaning. When we entertained the idea of a master creator, the majesty and beauty of the natural world was another feather we placed in the creator's cap. We understood it as a gift and a blessing. But if we instead hold to our new grand narrative of the universe formation and the evolution of life, nature becomes, in my eyes, even more astounding, more of a source that should bring awe and wonder to our hearts. Once, people thought of nature as that which was opposed to the human, the battle of man against nature, and our natural instincts as those we needed to overcome in order to become civilized, our primal natural urges. We once thought of nature also as our mother and didn't know why things happen, but we knew not to fool with her. But now our understanding of nature, as guided by science, is as the interaction of all of the physical and biological processes, unguided, with each element adapting to or responding to its own specific environment and the forces to which it's exposed. These processes all occur over a great stretch of time. To set a scale here, if we view the universe as 1 week old, Our Earth was formed on day 5 of that week. The very earliest life forms started to appear during day 6. And on day 7, the dinosaurs showed up at about 9 p.m., and humans didn't appear until less than a minute before midnight. Our entire complete recorded history is less than 1 second of that week. So clearly, humanity is not essential for our world to work and for the natural processes to go ahead. We truly are a latecomer to the game of life. But there is also no question that humans are a special aspect of nature. Depending on your viewpoint, either nature's greatest accomplishment to date or its largest failure. Because we have evolved a sentient nature and a symbolic language, we alone can question, analyze, and experience the complexity of life. And with our technical accomplishments, we alone can truly have an impact on and reshape our environment. Geologists are wont to name this current era the Anthropocene, because our involvement finally has visibly and measurably altered the Earth and its atmosphere. We now see that our world is indeed a complex and interdependent web of all existence, as we talk about in our 7th principle. The many moving parts of our ecosystem are constantly shifting and adjusting, and in the big picture of time, all is transient. Even in the narrow window of time, the now, there is a tenuous and fragile balance of physical and biological parts. We see many species of plant and animal becoming extinct because their niche is no longer sustainable for whatever reason. Most of these changes are attributable to human intervention, whether we intended them or not, whether we understood what we were doing or not. The Aldo Leopold piece I read before the sermon was prescient. It was written before 1948, long before the modern eco-consciousness was in vogue. It began with that graphic and visceral accounting of the wolf, its place in the frontier, and the automatic reflexes of people to kill. I cannot let go of the imagery of her green eyes as she died. But the piece wasn't really about wolves. It was about life balance on the range. Killing wolves led to overabundant deer populations, which overgrazed the mountain, which led to a clearing of vegetation and a die-off of deer and many other life forms. The mountainside loses its abundance and becomes a desert. No trees, no deers, no wolves for decades. Aldo Leopold told us that we needed to know what the mountain knew, and we needed to learn to think like a mountain. Religious naturalism is a pursuit of humility and acceptance. We must learn that we are, biologically speaking, not all that special, and that we're but one part of a complete ongoing system of interdependency. The diversity and specialization of the other parts bring a beauty and an abundance and stimulation to the natural world that can and should please us aesthetically. We know that we should resist wanton destruction and exploitation of resources, particularly when we don't understand the likely consequences. But naturalism becomes a religious practice when we start to take the ultimate concerns of our species and our planet. We take these ultimate concerns to heart. And when we attend to the natural, we can experience humility, reverence, and awe. The spiritual is found in the effect that the natural world has on us and what it evokes within us. Chet Ramo, who writes frequently on the topic, says, grace is everywhere, and that materialistic emergence is in everything. And it's far more magical than the religion-based miracles we have heard described. To clarify, when he says materialistic emergence, he's talking about something real and significant coming from a lesser set of parts and components. The process of life growing from itself. The miracles he speaks of are immense. An entire cosmos expanding from one single point, already containing all of the matter that it ever will, we think. A planet of one small star somehow becoming a cauldron for the creation of life and living things. Life continuing, changing, and evolving. We notice the forms that become increasingly complex with specialized subparts, forms like us. We appreciate that our species has developed consciousness and the ability to share and refine our own learning. And some basic religious questions are easily handled in a naturalistic manner. Take death. Many posit that our traditional religions gained place in our culture when people began to bury their dead. Death has always been a problem and a mystery to humans. To the religious naturalist, though, death is only imminent because we are privileged. If you want to live forever, be a single-celled creature that reproduces by splitting, forever creating replicants of yourself. Single-celled algae and fungi do not have to die. They continue. Death is the price paid for becoming complex, becoming an organism relying on many interdependent parts. Ursula Goodenough asserts, death is the price paid to have trees and clams and grasshoppers, and death is the price paid to have human consciousness, to be aware of all that shimmering awareness and all that love. Our lives in this view don't just end in death. They by nature require our death. In my personal understanding, religious naturalism is fully complementary with religious humanism. We are the human species, and we live in a complex and dynamic natural order. What we know, what we think, what we care about, that comes mostly from our humanity, our personal and collective consciousness. But our species is inextricably a part of the ecosystem in which we are evolved, from which we evolve, where we live, and where we are sustained. There is beauty and awe and wonder in each being, the natural world and the world of humanity. Each gives us cause to feel reverence and special wonderment, and each brings us its own special grace conferred directly upon us. May we attend, may we care. So be it, blessed be, Ashe, Amen.